Do you know what it feels like when the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who destroy you? When the hands that should have held you safe instead dragged you into nightmares you could never wake from? That was my childhood. And tonight I will tell you everything. But before I go on, I want to say this. If you want to hear more of these untold truths, stories that cut deep, stories that make your skin crawl but open your eyes to what too many suffer in silence, then give this video a like and subscribe, because silence hides monsters, and stories like mine drag them into the light. I was just a little girl, innocent, barefoot, running through fields, laughing at the sky. I thought the world was kind. I thought my parents were gods. My father was strong, towering, the one everyone respected in the village. My mother, she was beauty. She was grace. People envied her. To the world they were perfect. To me they were everything. But inside our house, behind those closed doors, they were demons. It began with my father. His eyes. I will never forget the way they changed when no one else was watching. Eyes that should have been filled with love for his daughter, instead burned with something vile, something sick. I didn't understand at first. I was too young, too trusting, until the night he came into my room. I still remember the smell of his clothes, the sound of his breath, heavy, wrong. I remember the way he whispered my name like it was some kind of curse. That night, my childhood ended, and what hurt even more was her, my mother. She knew. She saw. She didn't stop it. She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't protect me. No. She watched, and sometimes she smiled. Can you imagine that? The woman who gave me life, the one who should have been. My shield stood by, enjoying my destruction. That betrayal. It's a wound that never closes. I wanted to believe it was a nightmare, that I would wake up and everything would be normal again. But it wasn't one night. It was many, too many. My father's shadow filled every corner of my childhood. And my mother? She let it happen. She wanted it. She fed off it. And I was the sacrifice. I learned silence early. Because who could I tell? Who would believe a little girl over a respected man? Over a beautiful woman who laughed in public, while I cried in private? Silence became my prison. My father was the guard. My mother was the accomplice. And I was the inmate. But here's where the story twists. One evening, after months, maybe years, of this torment, someone knocked on our door. Not a neighbor, not a friend. The police? Yes. Someone had seen something, heard something. Maybe it was my muffled cries through the thin walls. Maybe it was the bruises I couldn't hide. Maybe it was just a neighbor's intuition. But they came. 2 officers. Flashlights. Questions. And for a moment, just for a moment, I thought God had sent me salvation. But do you know what happens when power meets corruption? My father smiled at them, offered them tea. My mother laughed, said, "Oh, children fall. They bruise. You know how clumsy they are." And the police? They nodded. They sipped the tea. They looked at me with suspicion. Not him. As if I was the liar. As if I was the shame. That night, after they left, he came to me again. And this time, it was worse. Because now he knew I had no savior. No one was coming for me. Not the neighbors. Not the police. not even my mother. I was alone, completely, utterly alone. Do you feel that chill? That hopelessness? That's what it was like to be me. A child trapped in a house of monsters. A child screaming with no voice, no one to hear. But listen to me carefully. Even in hell, sparks can flicker. Even in silence, defiance can grow. My story did not end there. And if you stay with me, I will tell you how I survived the devils I was born to. And how, in the end, a miracle found me. Do you know what it feels like to lose faith in your own mother? To look into her eyes hoping for rescue, and instead see amusement, pleasure, in your suffering. That's the wound that cuts deeper than any bruise. My father hurt my body, but my mother, she murdered my soul. After that night when the police came and left, something shifted inside me. I was still a child, but I understood one thing with chilling clarity. No one was going to save me. Not the neighbors, not the law, not my family. If I wanted to survive, I would have to save myself. But how? I was small, powerless, trapped in a cage of blood and lies. The abuse didn't stop. If anything, it became worse. My father, now emboldened, grew more violent. My mother, sometimes she would sit in the corner, watching, whispering to him, urging him on. Do you feel the sickness of that? To see your mother turn into a cheerleader of your pain. That image still haunts me when I close my eyes, and yet I couldn't scream, because screaming only made it worse. Silence became my only shield. I learned to dissociate, to leave my body while he used it. I would stare at the ceiling, count the cracks, imagine myself flying away through the window. I built whole worlds in my head just to survive the nights. But the world outside began to notice. Whispers started. Teachers asked why I always looked so tired. A neighbor asked about the bruises on my arms. My father would laugh. She's clumsy. My mother would smirk. She falls all the time. And the whispers would quiet, but not vanish. Then one day, it happened again. A second knock on the door. Police. Different officers this time. Their voices sharper, their questions harder. They had received concerns, they said. Someone had filed a report. My heart leapt. Could this be it? Could justice finally walk through my door? They asked me questions. Where did the bruises come from? Did my father ever touch me wrongly? Did my mother know? I opened my mouth and froze. Do you understand? The words were right there, burning in my throat, begging to escape. But my father's eyes bored into me. My mother's hand tightened on my shoulder, and I stayed silent. I lied. I said I fell. I said nothing was wrong, because fear is a cage stronger than steel. The police left again, and that night, my punishment was hell itself. My father beat me until I couldn't breathe. My mother stood by, smiling faintly, as though my screams were music. That was the night I truly understood. I wasn't their daughter. I was their victim, their toy, their secret. And here's the cruelest twist. Part of me wanted the police to come back. Part of me prayed for another knock. But another part of me was terrified, because what if they came again, and I froze again? What if they left again, and my punishment grew even worse? I lived in that tension, hoping for salvation, dreading it at the same time. The thriller of my childhood was this. Every day I waited for footsteps in the hallway, waited for knocks on the door, waited for the chance to speak, waited for the courage that never seemed to come. My life was a waiting game between terror and silence. But something inside me was changing, slowly, quietly. I was learning that silence was killing me as surely as my parents were. I didn't know when. I didn't know how. But deep inside, I made a vow. One day, I would speak, and when I did, it would shake the very walls of the house that had imprisoned me. You're still here? Then listen closely, because it only gets darker from here. After that second police visit, I lived in a state of constant terror. Every time I heard a knock at the door, my chest tightened. Was it them again? Would they see the truth this time? Or would I choke on fear and lie again? I was like a bird whose wings had been clipped, fluttering, panicking, desperate to fly, but bleeding every time I tried. My father? His violence became more calculated, less sloppy. He made sure the bruises were hidden under clothes. He threatened me, whispered in my ear, "If you ever speak, I'll bury you where no one will find you." And when he said it, I believed him. He wasn't bluffing. I'd seen the rage in his eyes. He was capable of anything. And my mother, God, how do I describe her? She wasn't just complicit. She seemed to feed on it. Sometimes she would stand in the doorway, arms folded, smirking while it happened. Other times she would turn the radio louder to drown out my cries. That was her way of helping, not me, but him. Protecting him, shielding him, encouraging him. Do you understand the madness of that? A mother who enjoys her child's torment? But then, something unexpected happened. One night while I was curled up on my bed, bruised, trembling, barely able to breathe, I heard whispers outside the window. A neighbor's voice. I pressed my ear to the glass. She cries every night. I know. I told you. Should we call the police again? They never do anything. He's respected. He has friends on the force. That last sentence, it hit me like ice water. Friends on the force. That's why the police never pressed. That's why they nodded and drank tea. My father wasn't just a monster at home. He was a man of power outside. He had allies, protection. Even the law bent to him. My hope cracked. My small belief in justice shattered. And for a while I sank. I stopped even imagining escape. I became a shell. Silent, obedient, barely alive. But survival has a way of sparking when you least expect it. It was during one of those nights, the worst nights, when my father's rage was at its peak. He beat me until I was sure I'd never open my eyes again. And when I lay there, half conscious, I heard something. My mother's voice, low, urgent, whispering, not to me but to him. Careful. If she dies, they'll ask questions. Can you imagine? Not out of love, not out of guilt, just fear of being caught. My survival depended not on their mercy, but on their paranoia. That realization, twisted, chilling as it was, became my weapon. From that night, I played their game. I acted weaker than I was, but not too weak. I obeyed just enough to keep suspicion low. I let them believe they owned me. But deep inside, I began planning, watching, waiting. And then the police came a third time. This time, I was ready. The third time the police came, I was ready. I remember it so clearly. The sharp knock, the heavy boots on the porch. the way my father's smile froze for just a moment before he plastered it back on. My heart pounded like a drum inside my chest. This was my chance, maybe my last. 2 officers. Not the same ones as before. Younger, hungrier. They didn't smile at the tea. They didn't laugh at my father's jokes. They walked through the house, flashlights sweeping every corner. And when their eyes landed on me, standing in the shadows, small, bruised, one of them tilted his head. He saw something. He asked me questions. Not in front of my father. Not in front of my mother. He took me aside, crouched to my level, voice gentle. "Are you safe here? Did someone hurt you? You can tell me." My throat burned. The words clawed inside me, begging to come out. This was the moment I had prayed for. My father wasn't within arm's reach. My mother couldn't glare me into silence. I could speak. I could finally tell the truth. And yet, terror gripped me. My father's threats rang in my ears, his voice whispering, "If you speak, I'll bury you." I looked at the officer's eyes. Kind, yes, but would he protect me when my father had friends everywhere? Would he stay after the questions? Or would he leave, like all the others, and abandon me to a punishment I might not survive? I froze. My lips trembled. No sound came. And the officer's hopeful look dimmed. He asked again, softer, pleading. I shook my head. Lied. Said I fell. Said I was clumsy. The lie tasted like poison. They left. But here's the twist you don't expect. This time they didn't just leave it there. One of them lingered. He turned back at the door, eyes narrowing at my father. "We'll be back," he said. "And next time we'll be ready." For the first time I saw fear in my father's eyes. Just a flicker, but it was there. And that flicker, it gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. But hope is dangerous. That night, my father's rage was unlike anything I'd ever endured. He stormed into my room, his fists like hammers, his voice a thunderous roar. "You tried to speak," he shouted. "You think they'll save you. No one saves you. You belong to me." And my mother? She stood in the corner, smirking, whispering encouragement to him like a devil on his shoulder. Every blow was punctuated by her soft laugh. The sound of it still crawls under my skin. I thought I would die that night. I truly did. But survival is cruel. It keeps you alive even when you beg for the end. I woke the next morning battered, but breathing. Barely. And that was when I knew, if I didn't act soon, I wouldn't make it. So I made a plan. Do you want to know how I survived? How a little girl, trapped between a monster of a father and a mother who enjoyed my pain, finally found a way out. Then listen carefully, because this is where my story changes. After that third police visit, I couldn't shake the look in the officer's eyes when he said, "We'll be back." For the first time in my life, I believed maybe, just maybe, someone out there was on my side. But I also knew this. My father wouldn't let me see another sunrise if he suspected I was planning anything. So I played my part. Silent, obedient, broken on the outside. But inside, I was planning, watching every detail, listening to every sound, waiting for my moment. It came one night. My father was drinking, more than usual. My mother was humming in the kitchen, a low tune, like she was celebrating my misery. He stumbled into my room, muttering, swaying, his eyes glassy. I knew what was coming, but something inside me snapped. Not today. Not anymore. When he lunged toward me, I didn't freeze. I grabbed the only weapon I had, a shard of glass from a broken cup I had hidden days before. My hands shook, my whole body trembled, but I held it up between us. His eyes widened, then narrowed into rage. He grabbed my arm, twisted, struck me across the face. But in that chaos, I screamed. Loud. Louder than I'd ever screamed in my life. A scream that tore my throat raw. And for the first time, I didn't stop screaming. Neighbors heard. Dogs barked. Lights flicked on across the street. And then, sirens. Real sirens. The sound of salvation crashing into my nightmare. The door burst open. Police stormed in. Not the smiling ones. Not the corrupt ones. These were the young officers. The ones who had promised they'd be back. Guns drawn. Voices shouting. My father froze. My mother screamed, but not for me. For him. And then, it was over. They dragged him out of the house. My mother too, when they realized she had known, had covered, had enjoyed. The neighbors stood in the street, watching, whispering, some crying. And me. I stood in the doorway, bruised, trembling, blood dripping from my lip. But free. For the first time in my life, free. Do you know what freedom feels like when you've never had it? It's terrifying. It's blinding. I cried, that night, not from pain but from release. The walls that had been my prison were suddenly empty. The silence in the house wasn't heavy anymore. It was holy. The trial was long, painful. People doubted, people whispered. But this time, I spoke. I told everything, every detail, every scar. And though my father tried to use his power, though my mother lied through her teeth, the truth finally cut through. They were both taken away, gone, and me. I was placed with relatives who were far from perfect, but they weren't monsters. For the first time, I slept without fear of footsteps in the hallway. For the first time, I was a child again, even if only in pieces. But listen, survival isn't the end. Scars don't vanish. The nightmares linger. The betrayal of my mother burns even now, decades later. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear her laugh. Sometimes when I walk past a window, I still see my father's shadow. But here's the truth I want you to hear. The reason I tell this story at all. I survived. I shouldn't have. Everything was against me. Silence, corruption, fear, betrayal. But I am here, breathing, speaking. And every word I speak now is a knife against the silence that tried to bury me. So if you're listening, if you're out there and you know what it's like to suffer in silence, hear me. You are not alone. There are monsters in this world, yes. But there is also hope. There is also survival. There are screams that will be heard. And if an abused little girl like me can grow into this, a grandmother telling her story with trembling hands but an unbroken spirit, then you too can survive. That is my story, my truth, my struggle, my freedom.